Spider-Man on PC is finally here, and I couldn't be happier. I finally got a PlayStation 5 and I picked it up on there, and then around that time, they confirmed it was coming to the PC. I played it a little bit on the PlayStation 5, but I wanted to save something for the PC platform, and I'm happy that I did. Honestly, it's one of the best PC ports I've seen in a very long time. There's a lot of quality of life changes in the menus that give you more control over your overall gaming experience, and I'm all about that. I'm very impressed with this PC port, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about Spider-Man on the PC. Are you getting it? Have you already picked it up? Do you like it? Let's have a good discussion about it. They added in exclusive full screen. Now, what this allows you to do is it allows you to change your resolution, or you can change your refresh rate. If you want to run at a native 4K with only 100 Hertz, you can. Or if you want to drop it down to 1800p but still get 120 Hertz, you can. Next up, we have the graphics options, and of course, we have many different kinds of presets at our disposal here. You have low, medium, high, very high, and here's a fun fact. A lot of YouTubers have been benchmarking this game, doing very similar videos of what I'm doing right now and saying, hey, we're about to max out Spider-Man. They put it on the very high preset and they start gaming. Newsflash, this is not maxed out. You want to see maxed out? You put it on the very high preset and then you go over to texture filtering, 8x. Guess what? 8x isn't as far as it goes. You can put it up to 16x. Under shadow quality, you can move that from high all the way up to very high. And then of course, you can have ray tracing on or off. And then under level of detail, you can bump that up to very high as well. And the rest of the settings are pretty much default with the very high preset, and those are the highest available options. Okay, so the game plan is to test the game at native 4K with everything maxed out, starting with ray tracing turned off. Then we'll turn ray tracing on, and then we'll do ray tracing with DLSS quality mode. I'll explain more about that in a minute. Then we'll do all the same testing, but at 1440p. If you want to see more than that, then be sure to hit the like button and drop a comment letting me know what you want to see, and I'll be more than happy to do it for you. I am using OBS to record this video, and OBS can be a little bit taxing on the gaming performance itself. You can actually expect to get up to 14 frames more in performance when you're playing this game using my hardware at these exact settings without running OBS in the background. Okay, so the game plan is to swing through the city and check out different parts of the map, and we're trying to evaluate the performance depending on the side of the map that you're on at the time. And we'll be running a RTX 3080 and an AMD Ryzen 5800X. All right, swinging through the city, you can see at different parts, we're all over the place. I just saw 90 something FPS, and then we dipped down to 70 FPS, and now we're in the mid 80s. So the one thing I'll say is that the frame rate does fluctuate quite a bit. I mean, you're talking pretty drastic changes here, around 20-25 FPS, just depending on what side of the map you're even on. But I do have a 4K OLED TV as my main monitor, and I do have G-Sync turned on. So between OLED's instant response time and G-Sync, I basically have a flawless gaming experience, and I honestly can't tell a dip or a difference between 85 FPS and 100 FPS. But this is what you can expect to see with no ray tracing, everything maxed out, native 4K, and no upscaling of any kind. So now, let's start turning on ray tracing and see how much of a dip we take. Okay, so ray tracing is turned on. I left it on the default high with object range set to 8. We may play with that more here in a minute. Oh yeah, you can already see we're already down to 48 FPS. And this is not even turning object range all the way up to 10. This is not even turning ray tracing on to very high. Ray tracing is incredibly demanding. It always has been. It likely always will be. And that is the reason why you have upscaling technologies. Now, this is a situation where I do notice the difference. I can definitely tell that I'm not above 60 FPS anymore. This is what you can expect with native 4K, everything maxed out, RTX 3080, 5800X, and ray tracing turned on. So what happens if we turn on DLSS? Okay, I'm turning on DLSS, and I'll only use the quality mode, and let me explain why. The way DLSS works, or the way any technology works in terms of upscaling, is it grabs a lower resolution and upscales it to your target resolution. So in this case, we want to play at 4K. DLSS will dip down to a lower resolution and scale it up to 4K. So newsflash, if you're out there running DLSS or any other upscaling technology and you're telling people, hey, I'm gaming at 4K, you're not actually gaming at 4K. That is not a native 4K. You're either running at 1080p or 1440p. And the reason why I use DLSS quality is because it upscales from 1440p, whereas all the other options will upscale from 1080p, and I want the best image quality possible when I game. Okay, so ray tracing is still turned on, but we have now enabled DLSS quality mode, and as you can see, just sitting here, we're in the 60s and 70s on our frame rate, which is a radical improvement over what we had before. We're no longer at that native 4K, but hey, this is how some people like to play. And the other question here is, was it worth it? Here's a window with obvious ray trace reflections on it, and this is what you can expect to see. And if you look across the street, you can see that is an accurate reflection. If you look in the window, what you see is what you get. And what can you expect if you turn off ray tracing? Well, this is what you can expect right here. This, in my opinion, still looks really good, and you're not going to overly notice these are fake reflections that are baked into the game as you're swinging through the city. But if you look in the window and you look across, obviously these two images do not really line up. These are baked in, pre-built reflections, if you will. Okay, so another thing that I love about this game is you don't have to restart your game in order for your settings to take effect. This is ray tracing turned off. I will turn it on in real time, give it just a second. It will automatically update itself. There you go, it automatically updated itself. And you can now see the drastic difference between ray tracing on and ray tracing off. So this is ray tracing on. This is ray tracing turned off. Obviously, it updated faster when you're taking off ray tracing as opposed to when you're putting it on, but there is a big difference in terms of reflection quality. But is it worth it to have to enable upscaling methodologies and to still have a lower frame rate? Okay, so now let's start back over. We will drop down the 1440p and we will turn off the upscaling technologies for now. Wow, immediately we're over 100 FPS. So you're looking at native 1440p, everything maxed out except for ray tracing. Now my display can only do 120 Hertz. So I have it locked to 120 FPS. I said this before in my 50 tips video, the fastest way to improve your frame rate is to lower your resolution and then settings after that. And as you can see here, we lower the resolution and yeah, it's doing a good job here. So native 1440p, swinging through the city, everything turned on except for ray tracing. And yeah, we're hovering low 90s to low 100s. And I'll admit, I mean, for a 3080, everything being maxed out at native 1440p with no ray tracing, I did expect a little more. Like I expected to be, you know, more consistently in the 100s, closer to that 120 FPS marker. But this game is, you know, fairly demanding. It is well optimized and it does scale well, but I mean, this game does have high textures and it is a very good looking game and it is a modern AAA title. Okay, and now for the moment of truth, native 1440p with everything turned on, including ray tracing, but no upscaling technologies of any kind. You know, swinging through the city, the frame rate is still above 60 FPS in most cases. And I've noticed the higher I get, the better the frame rate is. So that's pretty good to know. So best case, standing on top of a building, 85 FPS, 89 FPS now with ray tracing turned on. And now in the city streets, walking around, 1440p, maxed out with ray tracing turned on, we're in the 70s. Okay, yeah, so the more assets we're adding in here, the worse it's getting. Obviously, everything's maxed out. So this is large crowds, large traffic density. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we can't forget the fact that ray tracing is honestly very taxing on the system. And now it's time to go turn on some upscaling technologies. So we're going to turn on DLSS quality, shooting for 1440p. It will no longer be a native 1440p. And everything's maxed out and ray tracing is turned on. And right here in this area, we were dipping down to the 40s before. Yeah, we're right around 60 FPS, you know, 62 to 58. Now we're up to 65, 68. And as we get further away from that one place, you know, we're increasing the frame rate. We're going up to the 70s now. Here's my final thoughts. I think Spider-Man was a good decision to bring over to the PC. I think they did a phenomenal job porting it over. They added a bunch of little changes that really enhanced the overall user experience, and I give a lot of props for that. I definitely think ray tracing should be saved for 4K because upscaling should be saved for 4K. We saw here that ray tracing is incredibly taxing, even at 1440p, and it does require you to resort to upscaling technologies. And with upscaling technologies lowering the resolution, you're getting further and further away from your desired target resolution every time you lower the resolution and add upscaling on top of it. In this situation, this is definitely playable, but I definitely see the imperfections. You can actually look at the clouds and you can see shimmering in the sky quality. You can see shimmering in the image itself. The lower you have to go in your resolution, the worse the overall image quality will be at the end of the day. And that is why I only use quality mode whenever I'm using upscaling technologies, because if this image has this many issues, even on DLSS quality, it's only going to be worse if I switch it to performance or something like that. So I think most people should probably try and run a setup where you don't have to resort to using upscaling technologies. And so that does mean avoiding ray tracing in most situations. If you are gaming in 4K and if you are okay with losing the performance itself, then you can turn on ray tracing and DLSS quality mode and have a relatively clean image and a respectable frame rate above 60 FPS in most cases, with the occasional dip down below 60 FPS. But hey, let me know in the comment section down below, did I miss something? Is there something you want to see that I didn't test or didn't test properly? I would love to know your thoughts on this. Do you have Spider-Man? Are you planning on getting Spider-Man? Let me know down below, because I'm super excited about this game and I really want to talk to other people who are also excited about the game. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It goes a long way in helping me out. If you're new here, consider subscribing and becoming part of the community. I would love to have you. And until next time, E-Rock out.